What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with a course breakdown for the Sony Open. We were able to start 2023 with a bang last week, hit the holy trifecta between Prize Picks, Draftkings, and of course the outright market where we had a John Rahm outright. We had tons of winners, a couple real big winners down in the Discord this week, and on Prize Picks, outside of the sweep that we had on Saturday for just an ungodly amount of units, also over a 67% hit rate on all 4 days. So overall, just exactly what we were looking for going into this year. But for this course breakdown, we're wiping the slate clean. We're looking to get after it on yet again another Hawaii event with Waialae Country Club, one of the real foundational pieces that we have on the PGA Tour schedule. There's a lot of movement, different courses, different venues that are added over time. But for the last half century, players have been teeing it up at Waialae Country Club. It's been a part of video games, the EA Sports game from just over 10 years ago. This was the course that was featured on that video game, albeit a little bit of a disappointment from the gameplay side, but still an iconic venue where you're going to get an entire field that can go out there and win. And sure, you have players out of form. You got to have the irons to go out there. But from a driving distance standpoint, it's one of the more fair tests all year, right? Kind of like a Harbor Town, a Seaside course at the RSM Classic, all of those sort of shorter tracks. The older players like a Matt Kuchar, those positional players like a Brendan Todd that we've seen compete at these courses, really come into contention. So it's a wide open field, long shots galore at the Sony Open. Let's go ahead and get this course breakdown started with everything you need to know for this venue. Key stats, comp courses, a hole-by-hole breakdown. We'll have you covered. So with so much to go through, let's go ahead and get this thing started. So Waialae Country Club on Honolulu, Hawaii, one of the largest cities, I believe the capital and largest city of all the Hawaiian Islands. This is a classic old-timer course designed by Seth Rayner in 1927, so it's been around for a while, but it's had plenty of renovations. You've had Robert Trent Jones go in there, you've had Tom Doak over the years add their footprint to this course, and then 3 or 4 other designers as well. So it's nowhere near the same course that you saw when it first opened, but at this point, it's really a unique course, and it's really easy to characterize it. So let's go through some of the metrics. Par 70 is a short par 70 at just 7,044 yards. And one thing to note is an extremely flat piece of property. You've got yourself receptive greens. Because it's flat, it's down in a valley. A lot of the runoff ends up going onto this golf course, which helps from the irrigation perspective, but also leads to extremely receptive greens, darts that players are going to be throwing all week, which helps with the scoring. You're also looking at lush Bermuda rough. This year, especially more lush than what you've seen over the last few years. It's about 3/4 of an inch longer here in 2023. Sporadic trees. There's a few areas where you certainly cannot miss off the tee. I believe it's hole number 16 where there's a huge jungle down the left side of that fairway. Or if you end up in it, it's not out of bounds, it's not a hazard. You're going to have a hard time even getting the ball back into play. You've seen players hit trees on their little chip shots there. Some players had to play backwards to try and get back into the fairway. So there's a few, I call them sporadic tree-lined fairways where you can really get into trouble, but there's also plenty of wide open areas as well. So it's a unique track. We'll talk about all of those dangerous areas when we go hole by hole. And you got yourself tropical, typical Hawaiian weather. Should be in the mid 70s, maybe low 80s throughout the week. Winds right around 10 miles an hour every single day. You might get a few lower wind days where it's closer to 3-4 miles an hour wind. And as of right now, the forecast is also calling for 2 days with the winds closer to 15 to 20 miles an hour, which you would expect from a tropical climate. The winds are going to be a little bit volatile, and they're usually going to kick up at least 1 or 2 days over the weekend. That is extremely consistent with what we've seen over the last few years, and is likely what we see for this year's iteration. Just looking at the greens, some of the metrics that we saw here from 2022. So first off, your scoring average last year was 2 under par. That's a 68 on the par 70 setup. Your winning score was 23 under par, where Hideki ended up beating Henley in a playoff. The cut was -5. The year prior, it was -4. So you're looking at having to go relatively low to make it to the weekend. And when you take a look at some of the recent champions, you have a Kevin Na, a Matt Kuchar, a Patton Kizzire, Justin Thomas, Fabian Gomez, Johnny Walker, and Russell Henley. Outside of Justin Thomas, all of those players are relatively short off the tee, but the one key consistency is all of them are great iron players. So that gives you an idea for the just type of player that we're looking for this week, which of course we will elaborate on extensively later on with our key stats. But you're looking at a short player's course. And that's also really apparent when you look at some of the fairway percentages. So fairways are Bermuda grass. They are 36.9 yards wide, which, believe it or not, is 2.2 yards wider than average. So a lot of I've seen a misnomer at this course over the years where people claim that it has ribbon-like fairways. That's not really the case. They are hit at a 0.3% rate higher than average at 66.3%. So that misnomer out there certainly wasn't the case last year. It was a little bit more receptive in 2022, so that's why the fairway percentage was a little bit higher than what we've seen historically. But still, the fairways have got some width to them, but they're not the wide fairways that we saw at Kapalua. The rough is also Bermuda grass, and the real change here is that it's 3 inches in 2023 as opposed to 2.25 inches in 2021, 2022, and pretty much up until this year, that's always been right about that length. The missed fairway penalty last year was 0.36 strokes, which was 0.01 less than average, so pretty much dead on the PGA Tour average. But adding that 0.75 inch length is probably going to make it at least a little bit more difficult, right? Closer to maybe half a stroke missed penalty for missing some of these fairways, but we don't have any data on that, so it's hard to give you a pinpoint accurate projection. The greens are also Bermuda, which you're going to see from tip to toe at this track, running at 11 or 12 on the stint meter, and they are 7,100 square foot per green. So that is pretty much right on the tour average there. Greens running a little bit slower than what you might see on most weeks. And the GIR percentage, this is a huge one, is 75.2%. So not quite as high as what we had at Kapalua, but still a whole 7% higher than what you see week to week. So despite them not being massive targets, despite the rough being a little bit gnarly, it's not massive fairways, players are hitting a ton of these greens because of how receptive they are. I talked about that a little bit before. All of that moisture that gathers on the course makes the greens exceptionally receptive targets. So that helps players in terms of their GAR percentage, and is why the scoring average is a whole 2 strokes under par, and the cut over the last 2 years has been 5 and 4 under par respectively. Something to note is that the wind can factor in, but it's only really happened once over the last 7-8 years at this event. High winds could defend this course if they blow all weekend. So if you saw 15 to 20 miles an hour every single day throughout the event, the winning score might be closer to like 15, 16 under par. When Cam Smith won, it ended up being an 11 under par victory, which is a huge outlier compared to the 20 plus under scores we've seen pretty much every other year. That was because it was windy every single day. You had a front going through there. There was one day where it was closer to 25 to 30 mile an hour winds. And if that's the case, any golf course is going to play extremely difficult, but particularly a course like Waialae that's tropical, it's coastal, right there on the beach, a little bit more exposed than some of the other courses, even in tropical locations. Like El Camaleon's got all the trees to block you out. Harbor Town, same sort of thing, a bunch of trees to block you out. Here in Hawaii, because they're all palm trees, you don't get that same sort of blockage. So if it does end up blowing, it could wreak havoc. But as of right now, just giving you the early forecast, it looks like there's going to be 2 days with extremely low winds where players are just going to nuke this golf course, probably have a 3, maybe 3.5 under par average. And then 2 days of moderate winds, which are just right in that 10 to 15 mile an hour range. And it's early on a Monday. A lot is going to change forecast-wise throughout the week. But if that were to hold up, we're probably seeing an easy version of this event, right? 20 plus under par winning. But keep an eye on that forecast. It could change a lot throughout the week. Go to Honolulu. It's a little bit to the south of Honolulu, I believe, is the weather station that you should be looking for there. And make sure that those winds aren't kicking up, because if they are, the GAR percentages are going to plummet. The fairway percentages, I would expect to go down a little bit there. And overall, your scoring is going to be, probably closer to the mid-teens in terms of your winning score than perhaps the 23 under par score that we saw winning this there in 2022. All right, now for a detailed look at this course, hole by hole breakdown. So hole number 1 says par 5 on here. It's going to be converted to a par 4, and they don't use your typical tee shot here. So if I move the tee sheet up, they play it closer to 480 yards, which is this upper tee box. And your drives for these tour pros, you're not going to have to worry about that bunker at all. They're going to get it out there well past it, at least a 300-yard drive, leaving 140, 150 yards to the front of the green. probably an 8, maybe a 9 iron for some of these players. So not quite the handshake that you see at some of these tracks, but still, because it's shortened up, not all that bad for a converted par 5. Hole 2 is 428 yards. It's the first tee shot on property. There's actually not very many that have water in play for it, so you got to worry about that. Down the right, you have a bunker, a few trees that could get you into trouble. So here, you will see players lay up off the tee with something like a 3 iron. Some of them maybe hitting a hybrid out there if they have that in the bag. Put yourself at right around 150 yards, which if you can hit the fairway is just another birdie look, just like hole number 1, but the tee shot a little bit more difficult there. Hole 3, another tee shot with water on the left. So like I said, don't count on this all day. It's not a TPC Sawgrass PGA National where there's going to be water in play all the time. I believe only 5 holes on property even have a water hazard. And your second shot also has the lake to the left. So depending on the pin location, a front right pin location would be relatively straightforward. A back left, a little bit tricky. So a lot of that comes down to pin. Hole 4 is a 200-yard par 3, relatively large green, only bunkering to the left and to the right. So for players that can hit that straight ball or have that reliable shape where they can rely on either that fade or that draw, shouldn't have any troubles here on the par 4, but it's still a 200-yard par 3. It's not an easy birdie look, but it wouldn't surprise you if a lot of players made a 3 there, or 2 if they have a really good shot. So hole number 5 is 466. Wide open tee shot. Over here to the right, it's just your 3-inch Bermuda rough, so not that much to worry about, though there is OB if you miss quite far to the right. To the left, a little bit more worrisome. These trees are a little bit more dense than some of the other areas on property, so if you end up under them, you don't have an angle into the green. This little canal, little drainage ditch right in front of the green is going to keep players from trying to hit that hero shot. So if you miss to the left, most of them are going to be laying up right in front of that drainage ditch and trying to save a par that way. So it's a little bit of a tricky tee shot, which you can kind of see that driving accuracy, a little bit of a big deal around this track, right? The tee shots on 2 and 3 require you to be extremely accurate, even if you're laying up off the tee. Same thing on hole number 5. Hole 6 is 470. So believe it or not, the front 9 plays significantly more difficult than the back because you have hole number 1, 477. Hole number 6 is 470 yards. But still, if you can get out of here 1-2 under par through the first 7-8 holes, you're going to be in line to just nuke it on the back. Hole 7, 170-yard par 3. Now, you got a little bit better bunkering here. Some of the slopes do run into the bunkers as well, but still, it's only 170 yards, much like the other par 3. Most players are looking at making a 3, but if you hit that solid tee shot, you can get out of there with a 2. Pretty standard stuff. Hole 8 is 460. It's another relatively lengthy par 4. So, like I said, the front 9 a lot harder than the back, but only 160 into the green. Shouldn't cause that much trouble. Now, to the left, you can get into trouble in these trees. Once again, a little bit more of a dense area than what you see, especially on the back 9. That's a lot more open. The back 9 is also closer to the coast. So that's the trade-off there, is that you have a little bit higher winds because you're closer to the coast. It's also more exposed, so the winds can wreak a little bit more havoc. But off the tee, you can miss. You're going to have a little bit more room there. So players are a little bit more aggressive. Front 9, like I said, you get through at 1-2 under par. You're going to be pretty happy about it. Hole 9 is the easiest hole on property. It's a par 5 at just 500 yards. So even if you've done damage over the first 8 holes, you're 1-2 under par, you could get both of them back here on hole number 9. Has one of the highest eagle rates on all of the PGA Tour. Your shot in is going to be right around 200 yards. Could be closer to like 160, 170 for some of the longer players on tour, which, like hole number 5 at Kapalua, you're going to see a ton of 3s on the scorecard. Now heading to the back 9. This is where things are going to heat up in terms of scoring. Hole number 10 is a borderline drivable par 4. Most players are going to lay up off the tee, so this target out here at 270 might actually be a little bit aggressive. A lot of players are going to choose to lay it back a little bit further and leave themselves about 100 yards. 100 yards, a money range for these guys, particularly if it's a front pin. For front pins, I would expect players to lay it back even more, because if you're trying to, get it on the green close to a front pin with this little runoff area, you're going to have to land it past the hole and spin it back. If you're up close to this bunker here, let's say you hit driver on this hole, push it up there 300 yards, you're looking at a 40-yard chip shot, which is almost impossible to put spin on. So that makes that a little bit more tricky than, believe it or not, laying back another 60 yards, which will lead to better scoring. Hole 11 is 196, par 3. Pretty standard like the other two on property that we've touched on, but it's exposed to the coastline here. So if you're getting heavy winds coming off of the ocean, it could play a little bit more difficult, but it doesn't always blow in from the ocean here. You got to remember they're on an island, so it's not like you're on the west coast of the United States, east coast, where usually you get those winds coming onto the mainland. It's not the same here. So that comes down to wind direction. Either way, though, most players are going to make a par there, like your first two par threes. Hole 12 is 435, so a shorter par 4. A lot of players are going to lay up. You're not going to see a ton of drivers on this hole. The trees are a little bit more sporadic, so that's what I mentioned. Front 9 a little bit more dense than what you have on the back. You miss to the right, you're likely going to have room to get it on the green. You miss to the left, these are palm trees. You're definitely going to have a shot onto the green unless you're stymied right next to one, leading to quite a few birdies on hole 12. Hole 13 is a converted par 5. This is actually a par 4. Again, they play this one a little bit shorter, so if I set the tee location correctly, I believe they use this tee box across from the canal there, which has it at 440 yards. Your tee shot is likely just going to carry this bunker here. You can see this is just 275 off the tee, so a 3-wood is easily going to take that bunker out of play. If you're going to play this aggressively, now there are a few trees, you could... Most players, if you can hit a big power fade, right, you can get it out there 300 yards, well down there to right around 110 yards. So again, just like hole number 1, even though it's a converted par 5, I mean, hole number 1, you have 150 yards into the green. This hole, if you hit a driver, you have 110, 120 yards in. And even if you hit the 3-wood and play it a lot more conservatively, you're left with 150, 160 yards into a converted par 5. So, on paper, you'd think they'd be a little bit more difficult than they are, but you're going to see plenty of birdies there. Hole 14, difficult tee shot. You have that dense little area of trees on the left. To the right, some sporadic trees which can cause issues. So you got a net up here. A lot of players are going to hit a 3-wood, just try and put it in the short stuff. Which if you can accomplish, you're left with another wedge into the green. Just that's the real key here, guys, right? Keep it in the short stuff and you're going to have a good day. If you're missing with your driver, you're not going to score so well. Hole 15, a shorter par 4. It's 394 yards. Most players will hit 3-wood once again here. There's just no reason to push it down there with the driver. This is actually an even more conservative line than most players will take. You can see them hitting 3-wood, getting it out there 280. But even if you hit something like a 4, maybe even a 5-iron off the tee for some of these longer players, you're left with 144 yards in, which is just a perfect distance for these tour players, something they're expecting to put to 10 to 15 feet more often than not. Hole 16 is 441. Now, this is that tee shot I was talking about. This area of trees down to the left doesn't look all that bad. This specific area right here is absolute hell. You're going to see guys pull it to the left here and have absolutely no shot into the green. So what they're going to have to do here, many of them, is lay up backwards or even directly sideways just to leave them shot into it, just to leave themselves a shot into the green. Anytime you see this just like cluster of leaves right there, that's going to be an area you're going to have a hard time getting the ball through. So just keep that in mind if you're looking at some of these overhead views. This is also the hole with the W behind it that's on the coastline. Most of the iconic pictures of Waialae Country Club are of this hole number 16. It's a difficult one, but certainly a pretty one. Hole 17 is your last par 3, another exposed coastline par 3 here. So the other par 3 is right there, right? It was going onto the coastline. This one is directly adjacent to it. So if you have a wind coming off the left here, it's going to make this shot a little bit more difficult, but it could be coming from any direction. So it's hard to really say there. Hole 18 is your par 5. This is the hole where Hideki Matsuyama hit arguably one of the best 3-woods of all time. It was only upset by the one he had at the Zozo, right, where he ended up winning there on the final hole. So 18, a tough tee shot. I'll see a lot of players hit a 3-wood here. If you're aggressive, you can take this bunker out of play, get it out there something like a 300-yard carry. You're able to accomplish that, and that puts you at right around 220 in. So that's an extremely scoreable opportunity. Hideki did hit the 3-wood. He did what most players went with and just tried to hit it to the corner here, which puts you at 260. reachable for the entire field as well. So it doesn't really matter if you're aggressive or not. It's not like you can reach into by going for it off the tee and you can't by laying up off the tee. It's just that for some of the longer players on tour, I mean, if you're really aggressive about it, you can hit a draw around the corner here and put yourself at about 180, 170 yards even. So it's an interesting final hole. You saw that shot from Hideki last year, and potentially this year around, get to see something out there in that same sort of vein. All right, now that we've seen the course hole by hole, let's break down exactly what metrics I'm using this week to try and identify my top plays. And number one, we've got shots gained approach, and I've also added in the caveat of opportunities gained. If you're not familiar, opportunities gained are the amount of times a player's within 15 feet for birdie, right? So no matter what hole you're on, how many of those looks can you give yourself on any given tournament? And at a tournament where you're gonna see 20, 25 under par win, that's what we're looking for. But more importantly, I'm looking for the iron ranges in the middle tier, the 150 to 175, that 125 to 150. All of those middle irons, maybe pitching wedge ranges, lob wedge ranges are going to be way overutilized this week. We saw that even if you're laying up off the tee, you're looking at most like 150, 160 yards into most of the par fours. And then if you're a little bit more aggressive, you could be setting up wedge into at least 10, maybe even 11 holes. So that's going to be extremely prominent in my modeling there. But as it is most weeks, approach play going to be an important stat and definitely correlated from week to week. Number two, we've got shots gained putting. I'm looking at Bermuda stats, also looking at stats on slow greens, right around 11 or a 12 on the stint meter, and adding in flat greens. At Waialae Country Club, you do have subtle breaks, but nothing like you saw at Kapalua where you have that undulation. Augusta National, Memorial Park Golf Club for the Houston Open are all tracks with a lot of undulation. On the other end of that spectrum are courses like this, right, where they're flat. The whole property is essentially just directly flat over there in a little bit of a valley near Honolulu. It's going to be a factor. So I'm looking at slow greens, looking at flat greens, but mostly looking at shots gained putting on Bermuda. And at number three, we've got driving accuracy percentage, which was apparent when we went hole by hole there, but also good drive percentage. So good drive percentage is the amount of times that players are still able to hit a green regulation after their drive, which when we look at some of the stats is going to be important this week. The fairway percentage was only 66%, but the GIR percentage was well above average at above 75%. That means that players, when they are still missing the fairways here, are going to have an opportunity to hit the greens, which is why I'm trying to look at good drive percentage where you're not really putting yourself in hell, right? Some of those really deep areas off the tee with trees, what players can just eliminate that, right? Maybe miss to the right where there's a little bit less trees that are a little bit more sporadic and still hit the green. That's an art form and something you can encapsulate with good drive percentage. So that's a key stat for me. A few other ones, birdie or better percentage at a birdie fest is always important. Shots gained at birdie fest, shots gained putting on slow greens. I know we mentioned that a little bit earlier. Shots gained at courses below 7,100 yards are comp courses. Shots gained at Waialae Country Club, which has been extremely correlated to success over the years. There are guys that are horses for courses here undoubtedly. And also shots gained approach out of Bermuda rough. With that 3-inch rough, with that low fairway percentage, it's right around average at 66%. What players can go out there, still hit those greens regulation, even when they miss the fairway. If you can, match up that shots gained approach out of the rough on Bermuda and match that up with that good drive percentage, that might be a lethal combination this week, right? Where a lot of people that are going after chalk are going to be looking for players on just driving accuracy. Whereas if there's somebody that just hardly misses offline, has a good drive percentage, and they have good stats out of Bermuda rough, that's going to be a good sleeper pick for me this week. So I wanted to identify that. But now let's get into the comp courses. This is one of the easier weeks to do comps because it's got just a real identity to it. And there's a whole set of tracks on the PGA Tour venues that also have the short track. It's Bermuda. It's all about putting and keeping yourself in play. So number one, Sea Island Seaside course. That's the main course at the RSM Classic. I was there just about a month and a half, 2 months ago for that event, and it really matches up. You have different kinds of trouble off the tee. It's more of marshes there. There's not really that much rough at the RSM Classic. It's a lot more of just the areas you cannot miss in, waste bunkers, sporadic little areas of gorse bush, all that sort of fun stuff around that track. Whereas, it's more trees and just your typical parkland style when it comes to Hawaii. So it's a different approach off the tee, different sort of hazards, but the same kind of outcome. You can't miss fairways, and they're not large fairways at the RSM Classic, right around the same size. But when you miss, you're going to be punished for it. So that's why you've seen a lot of crossover. Bermuda greens, they tend to run a little bit slow there too, because it is a coastal track. And when the wind kicks up, it's a huge factor because both courses are right on the coast and heavily exposed to those conditions. So I like that as a comp. Also looking at Harbortown Golf Links, the home of the RSM Heritage. So both RSM courses on there. That's another short coastal track. It does have a little bit more protection from the wind because of the trees around it. It also has much larger fairways than what you're going to see here. So it's not a perfect comp, but still from the ball striking perspective, a short positional track where it's all about that Bermuda putting as well. Checks more than enough boxes. And there's also been a ton of crossover in terms of your leaderboards. And also the Sedgefield Country Club, home of the Wyndham Championship. Another more protected course. This one's also inland, so from the set perspective isn't quite as good a comp as the first two there, but from the ball striking, you have to keep it in play. You have to be pinpoint accurate off the tee. Lots of laying up, just hitting to exact landing areas, and then it's all about those mid irons and those wedges. So Tom Kim, who had a ton of success at that course, is going to be a popular pick this week. And frankly, he's going to be in my #1 pick this week, right, in terms of modeling. Now, ownership on the DFS side is going to decide whether they're playing a Tom Kim, but when you're trying to figure out your prototypical golfer, who to target, in this sort of field, regardless of price or talent level, it's that Tom Kim mold, right? Accurate off the tee, hits it dead straight, and then has those mid to short irons down to pat. So, and we know he's a good Bermuda putter too. So that's why he's the perfect course fit. And obviously he won at Wyndham this year for his first time. Other three comps, we've got El Camaleon, Mayakoba, another track where you have to be real accurate off the tee. It's not all that long. You've seen Matt Kuchar win at both events. You've had Brendan Todd have success at both of these events, so not a surprise. Port Royal, home of the Bermuda Championship, another comp I'm looking at. Short track, coastal, tropical conditions. Now, it has a little bit more elevation change than what we have here at Waialae. Also, the greens are a little bit more tricky than what you have at Waialae as well, but still another scoreable short Bermuda track. And Silverado Resort and Spa for the Fortinet. From the agronomy standpoint, a lot of changes, right? So it doesn't have that Bermuda. It has a little bit more elevation change as well. But from the ball striking perspective, you've got to be accurate off the tee. You also got to hit those mid to short irons well. So that is a crossover that I like looking at. And also from the leaderboard perspective, a lot of players that have had success at Silverado have also had success at all of the other 5 comps we've talked about. So another track I'm using for a little bit of my correlation analysis. All right, fellas, that is all we've got for the course breakdown. Super excited for this week. Waialae Country Club, our first full field event of 2023. Love myself a cut line. I cut sweat on Friday. And honestly, trying to box out some of the field. I think the best thing I do, honestly, when it comes to playing PGA DFS is getting a really high made cut percentage. I almost always am over the field. Sometimes I'm 3-4x the field. Now, trying to get that top end upside, that's a whole other question, even more difficult than making it to the weekend. But boy, oh boy, do I love myself a cut sweat. So appreciate you guys stopping by, showing all your support that you guys do here on the channel. Make sure you smash that like button. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that as well so you don't miss any of the content in the future. We'll be dropping a core picks video later on this evening with my top 6 picks for Draftkings this week. We'll be doing our live stream on Wednesday where we touch on the weather report, which will be a lot more accurate on Wednesday than it is right now, touching on any live questions that you have on that stream, going through DFS, prize picks on there, which was an absolute heater last week. We'll talk about the outright card, all of that sort of fun stuff for you guys out there. So really looking forward to it. I'll see you guys for that live stream on Wednesday, and hopefully we can win and add to the bankroll like we did there for the first event of 2023. Looking forward to it, guys. Best of luck, and I'll catch you guys next time.